Hello, my loves. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Destina. This is Spiritually Bougie Astrology, and we are going to be taking a look at the major astrological transits for May of 2023. We are going into a very, very busy month. There's going to be a lot of new layers to the changes that are already in effect, and we're going to have a lot of things come to the surface and give us some enlightenment. But first things first, we need to take a peek at what energies we are carrying over from the month before. So, one of those things, it's eclipse season. It's eclipse season, it's eclipse season, it's eclipse season. On April 19th, we had our second new moon in Aries. It was an out of sign eclipse because it was within 5 degrees of the North Node, which is still very much in Taurus. And it started a lot of surface level disruptions, a lot of surface level emotions being shaken up and being stirred, and really bringing little irritations to the forefront, more and more and more. There were other transits that occurred right before that eclipse that kind of amplified that. And I would say go back to watch some of those other previous weekly episodes, and that'll explain that a little bit more. However, moving forward, we are taking a lot of action in this eclipse season because both eclipses are ruled by Mars. Mars is the god of war. He is driven, he is motivated, he's armed. He will cut you off, he will tell you his boundaries, and he doesn't care how you feel about it. And the longer Mars is in Cancer, the more I tend to, one, say that, and two, hear that. I don't really care if it bothers you. I don't really care if it's making you mad, but it's how we feel. One of the other carryovers that we have is the fact that it's Mercury retrograde. 2 days after eclipse season started, Mercury turned retrograde. That one day that we didn't have a Mercury retrograde, but we were in eclipse season was like a limbo day. It really was. It was a limbo day. It was so funny. But then Mercury turned retrograde, and then exhaustion kicked in, or the irritation really kicked in, and we started to feel something in our minds change. And very literally within the first few days of that Mercury retrograde, a lot of people just like pump the brakes. And I know that because a bunch of you ended up in my DMs. Just like, what is this? What's going on? Like, link. It's not that I don't want help, it's that I love you and that I already warned you. You just didn't listen. It's not my fault. It's the energy. Having a Mercury retrograde during eclipse season tells me a couple of things. And I've meditated on this, and I've put a lot of thought into it. And there's been some real clear things that have kind of come through in regards to like where we're at. In the first eclipse season in May of 2022, April to May of 2022, we also had a Mercury retrograde, but that's also when Jupiter went into Aries. I'm bringing this up in this intro part because it's going to play a big part in how things continue. Jupiter going into Aries started some very interesting energies for people last year, and that is either we started to take independent actions towards our own abundance and our own prosperity and our own hopes and dreams, or we were burning something up. And literally, after a year of Jupiter in Aries, there's like no in between. So let's talk about the first thing, the independent actions. I've seen so many people take an idea and turn it into a business, and they're starting their own business. They're taking their small business and they're trying to expand it, and they're trying to take it to the next level. And they have all these hopes in their action that things are going to go well. They're trying to do things. We're all, in one way, shape, or form, trying to do something that's going to build some level of prosperity. We're taking on a lot of independent actions. Now, Jupiter had just entered Aries last year during the first eclipse season. And that tells me that for a lot of people that were in certain connections or certain partnerships, that it kind of fizzled away. It's because this timeline was meant to take certain actions independently. We weren't supposed to be reliant on other people. We had to take certain self-starting actions. Now we're winding to the end of Mercury in Aries, not Mercury, Jupiter in Aries. Jupiter in Aries. So having that come to an end, having that actually end during this next eclipse season, and layering that with the fact that Mercury is retrograde, it tells me that we're getting to the point that independence has hit a bit of a threshold, that it's gone as far as it's going to go. And other people that had to step away, break away from, take steps back, go out of state for something, those areas where people had to make certain shifts are going to start to come back around, because we're about to take Jupiter into Taurus, which is going to reach a whole new level of stability. So, what about the burnout? Well, literally since Jupiter has went into Aries, we have seen so much wonkiness, this wave effect of up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down in regards to the financial system. Jupiter rules prosperity. Jupiter rules abundance. There has been so many deceptions come to the surface, so much money that has just kind of like burnt up. We've had a lot of inflation issues that are starting to like blow up in people's faces. But on top of that, there's other things that Jupiter rules. Specifically, there's things that are ruled on the body. And I've had a lot of people, excuse me, have certain things flare up, get inflamed, hurt. Jupiter rules the sciatic nerve. Jupiter rules the liver. Jupiter rules the hips. Jupiter has co-rulership of your feet and your lymphatic system. There has been, in one way, shape, or form, for many, many people, flare-ups, inflammation in the body, specifically in these areas, based off of the actions that we've taken. We're having certain things kind of like get affected on our body. We've been feeling different levels of inflared pain. And again, that's going to be something that continues for a while. So if you've been having issues with your sciatic nerve or anything else like that, I would not be surprised. I've also had a lot of people like with liver issues like discover them in the last year since Jupiter has went into Aries. So that's been interesting also. Okay. So let's take a look at where we're at in the transits. Monday, May 1st. May 1st is a Monday, so I can say that. And when we get to Monday, we get to something being revealed, something coming to the surface, something being unveiled, an area that has been shadowed or unclear or foggy is meant to be redefined, explained, reconnected in some way. Now, why do I say that? The moon is in Virgo. The moon is in Mercury's sign. Around lunchtime, which that's what the time it is right now, Venus is going to impose a square onto the moon. And then later into the evening, the moon is going to hit this opposition to Neptune. Now, in my private readings, I always explain Neptune, like the most visual way I can explain it is Neptune is Russell Brand. Both sides of him. There is the old school version of him from like, what was the movie? Get him to the something or other. And then Forgetting Sarah Marshall or something like that. Leaving Sarah Marshall, something like that. There was that version of him, the one that was never wanting to be clear, the one that didn't want to be sober, that always wanted to have some type of substance because he wanted to only feel that substance. He didn't want to feel reality. He wanted to just feel good. He wanted to just see the world through a fog, see it through rose-colored glasses. It's night. You're at a pool party. He's fully clothed. He's got glasses on. He offers you gum. It's not gum. Watch the gum. But then there's the other side. There's that newer side. There's the spiritual side, the one that's in tune with himself, in tune with his emotions, feeling the alignment, the ability to take manifestations to the next level. And there is likely one of two things. We're either breaking away from some type of fog, we're breaking out of some type of confusion, some type of substance, if you will, or we're getting a manifestation. We're starting to feel something come together, come to light. and come into tangible form, come into reality. Why am I saying it that way? When the moon is in this area, it goes through a bit of a T-square. Now, the T-square is not exact, and the square itself that I'm about to refer to will not perfect for a few days. But what's happening is Venus is going to square the moon, and the moon's going to hit this opposition to Neptune. Neptune is just now starting to impose a square onto Venus that's going to take a few days to perfect. At the same time, simultaneously, right here, we have Mercury and the Sun coming into a conjunction. We have a retrograde Mercury cazimi, and we are meant to have something come into the heart of the Sun, something come to light, something being revealed. What's being revealed? Something that revolves around Venus and Mars. Not Mars, Venus and Mercury. Sorry, Venus and Mercury. Why am I saying it that way? Remember, I didn't say this in the carryover in the beginning, so I apologize. Yeah, sorry. Venus and Mercury are in mutual reception. Anything that impacts Venus is impacting Mercury. Anything that's impacting Mercury is impacting Venus. They hooked. They're connected. They got their nice little soul tether that hasn't been broken yet, and it's not going to be broken until Venus goes into Cancer, and that's a few days away. So what we have is something of a heart-opening energy. There is something that we have desired, something that we have wanted to move towards, something that we have wanted to buy, something that we have wanted to build, something that we have wanted to do, somewhere we wanted to go, someone we wanted to reconnect with. They keep coming to the surface of our mind. We haven't been able to break the thought process of that person. And every time we walk outside, like little things are just like popping up, and like you see a version of their name. You hear a song that you listen to with that person. You see something that reminds you of that place that you went to. You have a commercial come on the TV, and it's literally a picture of the exact place that you took a vacation to like 4 years ago. Or you see a commercial come up on your phone, and it's an ad for the school that you were wanting to go to. Like, there's been this place of desire in our minds, and we need it to start to take a more tangible form. In many ways, the thing that comes through this day is mercurial. It is information. It is logistics. It is a car. It is something in regards to Mercury, because we have Venus in Mercury's sign in mutual reception, and we have the moon in Mercury's sign, impacting that Venus and impacting Neptune, the fog, the veil, the area that has not been clear. We are meant to have clarity at the first of the month. And that clarity is something that builds up from the weekend, because we have so much information and so much like tangible learning and experience learning, like learning from other people with experience from the weekend, that once we get into Monday, it's like coming to a peak. So really, this information thing, this is when the exact transit is. That's Monday. But really, whatever clarity comes through could actually come through the 29th, 30th, or the 1st. So we get the information, and we need time to process. We need time to think about it. We don't have the ability to take immediate action. That takes a few days. Now, there's one other thing that is going to happen on this day, and that is Pluto. Pluto is also turning retrograde on May 1st. So we're reaching a limit in our transformation, in talking about our trauma, in talking about abuse of power, in seeing abuse of power. We're reaching a limit, and things are going to have to start to pull back. Remember, in the March episode, I said that when Pluto went into Aquarius, this is a pinky toe dip. Just a pinky toe. There's the water, not ready, and it's going to back out. Pluto's at 0 degrees. It's going to back out pretty quick. It's not going to leave in the month of May. It's going to happen in June, but it's coming. Pluto's going to change signs. Pluto's going to move backwards. So we've reached a halting point in whatever we've been transforming. wherever we've been working on our healing process, wherever we've been trying to create an understanding to certain levels of abuses of power, of power struggles, of secrets, of the things that are not easily spoke about. That's the Pluto area. Pluto's going to start to go backwards. So to overcome certain fears and everything related to Pluto moving forward, it's going to take a lot of layers of support. You're going to hear me say that a few times over the next few months. Okay. Oh, let's take this forward. We're going to go to May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. Yeah, you're right. I'm going to back this up to roughly, yeah, it's right here. Now, this is 3 a.m. my time. It's 3 a.m. Central Time. I don't necessarily expect that everybody's going to be on their phone dealing with whatever they're dealing with at this time. However, the insomnia stuff that we've all been kind of going through, here is your fair warning. We might not be easily going to sleep May the 3rd into May the 4th. There can be that overthinking and needing to, the desire to talk about something, the desire to communicate something, the desire to reach out, the desire to take certain actions. That can be a big part of the play, not Sunday, the evening of the 3rd, going into the overnight of the 4th. So I'm only putting this up here based off the exact of the transit. I'm not necessarily worried about the time. For some of us, this will kind of play on May 3rd. For some of us, it's going to be more like May 4th. Let's add that human effect. Okay. The T-square between Neptune and Venus that started when the moon was in Virgo, it's no longer a T-square, but the square is still very active, and it's coming into its perfection. It's going to perfect May the 4th. It's going to perfect deeper into the day. But let's take a look at how this is going. Neptune is imposing a square onto Venus. At the same time, Jupiter, our hopeful action planet, is making a sextile to Venus. There's an area of cloudiness that we wish to deal with in regards to a romantic partner or an area of desire, someplace that we're wanting to go. And this is going to have a little bit more action involved with Jupiter. Now, again, these two are messing with Venus, but what is Venus doing? Venus is imposing a trine onto the moon right before we go into our full moon eclipse on the 5th. So imposing a trine onto the moon as the moon opposes Jupiter. There is action. There is an emotional area that needs to be revealed, that needs to become clear. There is something that needs to be spoken about. Venus is in Mercury's sign. Venus is in the sign of communication, and she's imposing a trine on the moon, who's in her sign. The moon is in Libra. The moon is in the sign of balance, and we must have balance in some way. That balance requires action because the moon is opposite Jupiter. The transit between Neptune, Jupiter, and Venus is actually going to continue even into the 5th when we get into the eclipse. But there is something right here. Part of what this tells me is that some of the things that just occurred the weekend of the 29th, the 30th, going into the 1st, that information that came through, it really does take a few days to process and get clear and see how we're going to handle it, see how we're going to process, see how we're going to take steps afterwards, see how we can communicate what actions we are wanting to take, seeing how we can get through a fog. We need to cut through the fog, and that's a big part of this energy. We're going to get to the 5th. I'm going to bump this by hour, and then I'll bump it by a day. There we go. So this is not the exact perfection. We're about 30 minutes before it happens. But this is May the 5th. 12:08 p.m. is what's on the screen. If I remember correctly, it was closer to like 12:35 that we're going to have the full moon perfect. Here is the sun at 14 degrees, 57 minutes. Here is the moon in opposition. Right now it's at 14 degrees and 44 minutes. This is the Mars ruled eclipse. And now we must take a look at Who rules Scorpio? Mars and Pluto. What is Pluto doing? Pluto is recently retrograde and having to go back over certain fears, certain frustrations, and certain things that have come to the surface over the last 2 months. This is the start of how we move backwards. Mars is in Cancer, scraping those surface level emotions and shaking up certain things and bringing out frustrations and bringing out a lot of reactiveness and so much energy. This can be a very frustrating day for certain people, but this can also be a very emotional day for people. Adding another layer on top of that, Neptune is still in that square to Venus. Venus is perfected a little bit further. Jupiter, however, is in a much closer connection to Venus. We have hopeful actions being communicated, regardless of the surface level emotions that have been, scratched through and irritated. We feel a completion in a lot of ways with this full moon in Scorpio, ending a fog, ending confusion, ending an area that has been veiled or unclear. We are looking at certain emotional fixations and seeing how they need to shift, how they need to break, and how we need to overcome certain things. There's a lot of energy tied to this eclipse. I'm not going to deep dive into this. I will actually do in a complete full moon eclipse video later on, and I will do a comparison from it to the last one. And then I'm also going to do a breakdown based off ascendants. So that'll be a whole separate episode by itself. Okay. Oh, the next day, May the 7th, here we are. And Venus is now in Cancer. Now, before, when Venus was in Gemini, we had mutual reception. We had the house swap going on. We had this energetic tether between Mercury to Venus and Venus to Mercury. When Venus changes signs, that ends. Now, when Venus goes into Cancer, she is in the most luxurious Roman bathhouse. I'm saying Greco, like Greco-Roman. Yeah, there you go. Greco-Roman bathhouse of milk and honey and fruit and wine and blunts, and she is in heaven in Cancer. However, there's still the Mars thing. So in some ways, Venus's energy going over Mars and going over this area of the sky in the sign of Cancer is going to be kind of like band-aid fixing recent disruptive emotions, recent frustrations. There's going to be a bit of a band-aid fix. For some of us, though, it's not all the recent. For some of us, it's going to be long-term emotions or things that we need to work through now to like reestablish trust based off of what has recently been revealed and where certain reconnections have occurred or are about to occur. That's the key thing on the about to. Having this Mercury retrograde layered on top of eclipse season makes me feel like we are bringing certain people back. I've said this before. Certain people that need to come back into the fold that are the big picture, that are going to be a part of the long-term process, that had to take steps away to work on things independently from a partner, from an alliance, from a relationship, from school. They had to go work on something else to be able to come back and experience this with fresh energy, with fresh eyes, with a renewed sense of connection. The last week, because this is a week away from when the Mercury retrograde will end, this last week of Mercury retrograde is going to have a lot of emotional things really being spoken about, really being dealt with. And again, we're going to start to do some band-aids in regards to certain recent disruptions in our emotions, certain frustrations that have occurred. Okay. Oh, let's get to May the 9th. And this is the most shocking day of the year. The sun will come into a conjunction with Uranus. Here we go, right here. Here's the sun, here's Uranus. This is at 18 degrees and 49 minutes at the moment. I'm going to bump this because this is interesting to me. There's a bump by hour right here. Right as the sun comes into a conjunction with Uranus, that is literally the very moment that Uranus leaves shadow. It was last year. Uranus had a little hangout party in the sign of Taurus at 18 degrees for like 3.5 months. And it started with a conjunction to the North Node, and then Mars came and joined into the mix. So, like that first few days of August, we had Mars, Uranus, and the North Node. And we've had an area where we were trying to take certain independent actions. We were trying to do certain things independently that we couldn't do. And literally, when Uranus turned retrograde, more at the end of August, there was an area where we made a concession, where we quit trying to be independent, where we gave in to something, where we made an adjustment, and we started to not be so independent. We started to take in others. We started to have others rely on us. We were forced to rely on another person in some way, shape, or form. When the sun comes into this conjunction with Uranus, something is meant to be revealed. Something is meant to come to the surface, something very, very unexpected. There's nothing conventional about Uranus. When the sun hits there, it's just like there is something super unexpected that is meant to be in the energy, whether that's for you directly, whether you're revealing something, or whether something's being revealed to you or in your immediate vicinity. There is a revelation that is very unexpected. Now, Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius, and Pluto is in Aquarius. Pluto has just turned retrograde. Part of that process of whatever we're having to go back over in regards to the Plutonian fear, trauma, that type of thing, the transformation, that can be a part of this revelation. That can be a part of what comes to the surface and what comes to light, what is being seen, what is being dealt with around this time, just so you guys are aware. So be aware of what's gone on since Pluto's went into Aquarius, and what has been, where did you make concessions last summer in August? Like, where did we quit resisting something and just kind of give in to the moment, or give in to the situation, or give in to having to not be so independent and not be so on our own? Where did we make a change in late August of last year? We're taking things past that point where we gave in concessions. Okay. Moving this forward, I'm going to get to right around. Okay, I've got this on the 13th. I'm going to leave it on the 13th, but I want to talk about through the 12th through the 14th. Now, if you did not see my Mercury retrograde video, I'm going to suggest going back to that. This ties into the Mercury retrograde and how something needs to end, how something needs to be dealt with. Mercury is slowing down and will be ending its retrograde on the 14th. That's actually going to happen on the 14th. But in the 12th, the 13th, and the 14th, Mercury also re-enters its sextile with Saturn. That's how this Mercury retrograde started, was in a sextile to Saturn. However, the difference is where Venus is right now, that's where Mars was. Mars was here. Mercury was direct, Mars was direct, Saturn was direct. Now Mercury's retrograde. As Mercury and Mars re-entered their sextile, that happened right at the beginning of the Mercury retrograde. A lot of people suddenly went and pumped their brakes. And I had said this in my Week Ahead podcast episode that actually talked about that weekend right before, or that weekend of the Mercury retrograde. So the 21st, the 22nd, 23rd. I said as we got through that weekend, there's going to be an area where we just suddenly feel the need to pump the brakes, not progress, not move forward. We are realizing all of a sudden something wasn't right. It wasn't for us. It did not fit. And we needed a turn. We needed a detour. We needed a pivot. We needed to change our mind, change directions, go backwards. Mercury, go backwards. It's retrograde. There's a lot of us that suddenly just went, nope, nope. And we just literally nope the fuck out. Nope, not doing it. Now we're coming to a different energy. Whatever we noped from, we've had time to move away from it, kind of break away, create some space. Then we got clarity. Something came to the surface, something came to light. And now we're towards the end. And we feel like we need to communicate certain emotions, communicate certain desires. And for a lot of us, there's a timing in this energy. Mercury is going to sextile Saturn. And for a lot of us, that's literally going to be the mercurial object, that mercurial situation, or mercurial person, the messenger going, you should probably reach out. You should probably talk to Venus. I think you've taken too long. You need to talk to Venus. The moon's going to hit this conjunction to Saturn. It's going to also hit this trine between Saturn and Venus. There's a bit more of a push. There's a bit more support. There's a bit more of a connection here. The moon does really well in Pisces. The moon is hosting Venus, and Venus is in her exaltation. There is deep level emotions that are going to be talked about, that are going to be looked at, that are going to be reaching a new connection, a new resurfacing. And with Mercury's energy, this is where I'm saying there's going to be people from the past that start to come back around. Things are going to start to come full circle in some way, shape, or form because of the information that has been provided through the Mercury retrograde. The resurfacing and the rethinking and the restructuring of certain things. Saturn rules time. You know you made a bad decision, Saturn. You know you jumped the gun. You know sticking to your guns the way that you do, cowboy, was the wrong thing to do. Maybe you need to talk to Venus. Maybe you need to rethink that decision. Maybe you need to change that decision. This is an emotional weekend, but not a heavy emotional weekend. I like the energy around the 13th. Okay. And again, that's the 12th, the 13th, and then at the 14th, what happens? Mercury goes direct. This is how this goes. I love this. I'm moving this by hour, just so everybody's aware, but people get salty with me. Okay, here's the moon making this conjunction to Neptune. They're both at 27 degrees. Here's Mercury, 5 degrees, 50 minutes in the sign of Taurus, retrograde. I bumped this from 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. The moon is past Neptune, is leaving its conjunction, and Mercury is direct. A veiled area, an area that has not been clear, is going to change. There is inspiration in the energy because at the same time as the moon and Neptune are in this conjunction, Mars is entering a trine from Neptune. There is inspiration in the actions. There's emotional inspiration. There's nostalgia. There's happiness. There's something very, very curious about the energy at hand. I'm really looking forward to like the 11th through the 14th. I really am. And of course, Mercury retrograde is done. Mercury's done. Now we just got to get through the shadow period, which is fine. That's just setting some things straight. So we're good with that. Now, move this along. On May the 16th, what do we have? Jupiter. Jupiter leaves Aries and Jupiter goes into Taurus. Jupiter is going into the sign of stability. It's going into Venus's sign. It's going to start to play a very big, heavy hand in what's going to happen in the upcoming Venus retrograde. We have to take certain actions of independence, and now we have a year plus of starting to move certain things into new areas of stability, taking our recent actions of independence and streamlining them into a way that's going to return value, that's going to give us hope, that's going to give us blessings in so many ways. We take things to a new level starting this day. Jupiter is in Taurus. Jupiter has changed signs, and then Jupiter also is immediately in a square to Pluto. Pluto is retrograde. We need the support of Jupiter to overcome something, to complete something, to work through the process of healing. Now, I'm going to take this forward because we have a lot of things that are going to happen right in the same, like it's a week of just like boom, 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 boom. So Jupiter goes into Taurus. This is the 16th. I'm going to bump this forward by like 2 days, and we get to that new moon in Taurus. I'm not going to bump this by hour right now. Here we go. This is actually going to perfect at 28 degrees of Taurus, and it's going to be in a sextile to Mars, which is about to leave Cancer. So we go into this energy all of a sudden of just like ending this to start this, ending one project to go to the next, ending one industry to start a new one, leaving one area to do something new. And there is this massive energy towards taking very positive steps forward, and they all kind of play out this week. They're coincided with Jupiter's energy going into Taurus and this new moon, which should be the eclipse, but isn't the eclipse because of its proximity away from the node. We have to be within 15 degrees of the nodes to be an eclipse. It's way past that. It's 25 degrees past that. So we get an eclipse level energy, but it's not actually an eclipse. That's the 18th. The 19th, and then, where's that? There's the 20th. Okay. Here's Mars entering a square from Jupiter. Both of these two have now changed signs. Jupiter is imposing its square onto Mars, and Mars has its opposition to Pluto. We need the support of Jupiter to start certain things. Mars is the builder. Just as much as Mars is the god of war, Mars is the builder. Jupiter is wanting to take things to a new level of stability, imposing things onto Mars, and Mars is going, okay, for your startup to be solid, certain actions must be taken. That's what Mars is going to start doing. This is the fixed fire sign. Actions that process over the next 6 weeks of Mars going through Leo is meant to have long-term effects. And it starts right here with Mars opposite Pluto. There's hopeful actions that have long-term effects that's meant to overcome fears, that's meant to complete transformations, that's meant to continue things that couldn't be continued before. And then we add the next day, the 21st, we still have the T-square. Here's Jupiter, here's Mars, here's Pluto, but now we're adding another layer, and we have the sun. The sun is now in Gemini. So we have this day of just like Jupiter 29, new sign. Mars at 29, the new sign. Sun at 29, new sign. There's going to be so much newness that really starts to come to a whole new level at this area of May. And it all happens all in a matter of days. So for some of us, it's literally going to be like, we've got the material, trades are going to be here on Monday. Trades start to show up, and we start to, put money into something. We're taking certain actions. We're communicating our desires. We're communicating how things need to progress and how things are going to work and how things are going to shine. That's this energy. However, we start to deal with Pluto and everything in regards to the recent fears and the recent traumas, the recent transformations that need to be handled, that need to be dealt with, that need to be completed. To complete them, we need support. That support is Jupiter. That support is Mars. Now, I also want to bring up the fact that Pluto rules Scorpio, Mars rules Scorpio. Part of this energy feels like it's tied to the eclipse and whatever the level up was a few days prior. Loosely, I'm saying days. It's 2 weeks. I know. I'm sorry. It all blurs together for me. I'm so sorry. This feels like it feeds from things that started in that eclipse energy. Now, the Libra full moon that we had back at the beginning of April, I said it was a bit of a side quest. That things that had occurred since the Neptune, Sun, Mercury, triple crap mess square Mars, that it started certain things that were not expected. And it kind of put us on a side quest. And that side quest pretty well wrapped up right around that Libra full moon. Like Easter weekend, that's when everything kind of like wrapped up. And then we had to take a step in another direction. and we had to go do something else. And this Mercury retrograde kind of gave us again a bit of a side quest. It was a whole separate side quest. Once we're now to this week, next we're back to Mercury being in this area of the sky, being in that sextile again from Saturn, being where it's at right now. We are taking certain things from one timeline and another timeline and another timeline, and we're starting to now weave them all together. What were we dealing with in March? What did we get distracted with? What kind of came to the surface? The people that have come back, the relocation that has happened, whatever, wherever we've launched certain things in our business, wherever we've taken things to the next level. Now we have to start to weave them together, and we start to interlace all the different elements, and we start to solidify things. There's a solid energy here in the things that we are intertwining and weaving and creating. Whatever we're taking to the next level, this is the gas. This is the acceleration. This is that pedal. We have direction. Okay. Moving this along, we're going to get to the 27th. Sorry, it's storming here and I just saw lightning. I was like, oh, look at that. I'm easily amused. Okay. The last major transit is right here. Saturn, 6 degrees, slowing down. Saturn's really been at 6 degrees all month, the whole month of May. It's not going to get past the 7-degree mark, and then it's going to turn retrograde. But Saturn is imposing a square onto the sun right here. For this to be done right, it has to be done a certain way. And we have to work through those actions. Experience over ego. Oh, I want a completely open concept kitchen, so we want to renovate the house. Okay, but that's a structural wall, babe. You can't just open it up. It'll make the roof cave in. We have to do this another way. And there's going to be a level of authority or a level of a governing body or a level of experience or an adultier adult than you, a parent, where we are imposing our experience, where we are explaining why something can't be done. And there's going to be frustrations. There's going to be some ego involved. There's going to be things that be like, what do you mean I can't have a completely open concept kitchen? What do you mean I can't, why? There's going to be a certain amount of information that is exchanged. Now, what I think is interesting is, I'm going to back this up by hour, is the moon transit and Mercury. So let's get the moon into the T-square. This is May 27th. This is at 11:08 a.m. my time, so Central Time. Here is the moon at 6 degrees. It's going to have this opposition with Saturn, and Saturn is going to be in this square with the sun. The sun is squaring the moon. This is that T-square energy again. Another one in the mutable signs. We have to make an adjustment. We have to make a change. What I think is really interesting, there's another layer to this besides just the moon. It's Mercury on the 27th. Mercury is at that 11-degree mark. This is the Cazimi mark that Mercury was at back on May 1st. So part of whatever was going on that day, whatever was being, worked through, whatever we were talking about on May 1st, it kind of comes back around on this day. It doesn't feel negative. It feels more along the lines of just like a decision that requires new information and a new way of thinking, or a reframing of how we're doing something, and going back to the drawing board a little bit. It's not negative. It's not heavy. It can be frustrating for a lot of people, especially if you're the sun being told no. But that's why I always flip a lot of these examples over to construction, is just like, because there's sometimes that no is really the main answer, because structurally, if you do something else, you're going to make it unsound. We need to make sure that we're making very sound decisions, sound actions. We're in this adjustment period going through Gemini season. We're going through mutable energy. Some of the things that we are wanting have to remain flexible. We need to be very precise on our goal and where we're wanting to get to, but we need to expect detours, and we need to expect the road bumps, and we need to expect to be flexible in our methods. This is that kind of energy. I understand what you want. I understand what you desire. I understand the goal. However, that's not going to work. In some ways, it's going to be just back and forth. In other ways, it's going to be going back to the drawing board. That's what this energy feels like. Okay. There's one other thing I want to talk about with the month of May. And the thing is like we go through it the last few weeks of May all the way into the first few weeks of June. And that's why I save this part to the end. And that is from basically May 20th to June 15th, Jupiter is going to be within 3 degrees of the North Node. As we get closer to the 1st of June, that's when everything's going to be a little bit more exact. But as Jupiter is in this time frame of being very conjunct the North Node, a lot of us are going to be very hopeful in our actions, almost consumed by hope, consumed by things that are falling into place and the manifestations that are coming through, consumed by the idea of prosperity, the idea of certain abundance, consumed by it, because Rahu, the North Node, the ever-consuming headless dragon, or I'm sorry, headless dragon, head of the dragon, the South Node is the body, the head of the dragon that just eats and eats and eats and eats and eats, it's a man-eater. It starts to really develop and envelop into Jupiter's energy. And for a lot of us, we're going to be very, very consumed by the idea of hope and prosperity. We're going to be very reliant on that new support that has come through. And we're going to have high hopes that everything is going to work well. And if we do the work, it will work well. And it will be able to do well in the pressure tests that will come this summer during the Venus retrograde. However, when we have such a large time span of everything just kind of falling into place and finally feeling really, really good, we can also get really complacent with Jupiter's energy. Everything's going well. Everything's going the way I want it. Everything's going right for me. It's finally here. I finally made it happen. And if you stay in that mindset and you don't do the work, what's going to happen is later on, you're going to have a very harsh reality check. Use the energy of the last few weeks of May and going into June, and I will reiterate this later on whenever we get closer to that point. Make sure we're not just getting lost in the energy and lost in the hope and lost in the moment, because the test later will cost you. If you do the work and we do the actions that are necessary in this energy, then we get rewarded later. So I want to be very clear about this energy. We are moving towards things that are very, very hopeful and very, very abundant and very, very prosperous. We're taking things to the next level, but we still have work to do even in the next level. We have to make the connections. We have to make the commitments. We have to do the healing. We have to finish the transformation. We have to finish the renovation. We have to finish the project. We have to finish what we started and what we've been working on since March. The shifts of March are really starting to go to that next level, and we're really starting to take things to a whole new shape. So be very, very aware of where we're at in the energy, in the moment, and take the correct action, take the correct steps as we finish the month out. Okay. I really hope this processes correctly, because I get tired of doing the same episode over and over and over again. It's like, oh, is that the Truman Show? No, Groundhog Day. Oh my God, I cannot think today. Groundhog Day, just waking up and just over and over. I've said the same thing over and over again. It's not a horrible thing. It's annoying. Anyways, there's a lot of things going on in May, and there's a lot of things finally getting to a new level, finally getting restored or renewed, rebalanced, reinvented, reconnecting. There's so much of the there's so much positiveness that's coming with this Mercury retrograde. It's just the fact that it didn't start positive. It really didn't. That Mars energy that was tied to it, it really was a lot of people just going pumping the brakes. No. No, 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 no. Yeah. Now we're starting to get things into a whole different energy. So May's going to be a lot of fun. And it's going to take us into a very interesting summer of getting things to a whole new level of shine and a level of stability and a level of proximity and being known. And I'm excited for it. I hope everybody else is too. The only two signs that I'm nervous for in this Venus retrograde that'll come up is going to be Virgo risings and Pisces risings. Like I don't like it for you guys. I don't. Sorry. I'm just being honest. But we will cover that in its own episode much, much later. So I love and appreciate every single one of you. I truly mean that whenever I say it. I hope this is helpful. Please share this with anyone else that you think it's going to be helpful for. This, again, is just the major astrological transits. I will still do my weekly episodes. And then next week, whenever we're closer to that full moon eclipse, I will do a full moon eclipse video that, again, is going to compare the two eclipses, where we're taking things finally, where certain things are going to start to take shape, and how things will affect each individual sign based off ascendant. So hit me up with questions, hit me up with concerns. Aside from that, I love and appreciate every single one of you, and subscribe.